Welcome to a very special edition of the Tech on Toast podcast. And this week, it's not me, it's Phil Street from Carrero hosting our panel that we hosted, I think 2 weeks ago now, in Caravan in Fitzrovia. The panel was all about the return to experience-led dining, and it was hosted by Lunchbox and Shift4. On the panel that day, we had Tom James, Managing Director at Bill's Restaurants, Harry Ridley, Director of Innovation at Levy UK and Ireland, James Walker, CEO from Lunchbox, and Weeraratna, Group Operations Director at Gaucho and M Restaurants. We joined the conversation a couple of minutes in, and as you hear James answering a question from Phil. Enjoy the show. It's a cracker. Thanks very much, Phil, for helping me out.
How do you straddle the balance between like a company like Emirates having a dossier on you, as you say, versus it coming across as stalking?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think it's very hard to find kind of a simple, this is the policy and this is how we do it. I think if you're going to use technology for non-public information, I think you do have to be careful with that and use, probably every possibility to keep that information secure and locked away, and be careful with it. I don't think there's one simple answer. So in the US, we don't have the PII kind of personal information laws that you have here. For Americans, we feel like we're tapping on our phones. What's this, cookies again? Come on, stop. Can I approve this for my whole trip? So I think some of it is cultural, some of it is on a country by country basis. And even though you're only 5.5 hours away from New York here, it's a very different environment. You move to mainland Europe, it's different again. So I think you've got to look at your customer base, you've got to look at where you are. And even in the US, customers in high-end restaurants probably more willing to accept kind of that information. Last time you were here, you had this bottle of wine and you really enjoyed it, and you had the steak is cooked a certain way. It's accretive to the experience, where if I went into McDonald's and I walked up to the CSO and they're like, "How are your kids?" I'd be like, "Oh my God." So I don't think there's a simple answer, but I think if you're going to excel in this area and you're going to dwell into it, I think you've got to take the requisite time to do it correctly.
Yeah, here. Just a quick show of hands from within you guys. Has anybody ever been anywhere where you've had that kind of dossier on you when you've arrived, and you felt that it's made a difference to your experience? Also, just tell us about it.
So both of them really are examples of places I've previously worked, and it's quite funny because the staff member starts to get a bit concerned that they don't recognise you, and it's like, I still got a staff tag or something, but there was a plethora of information about me because I had worked there. But it does, in my view, I think it can enhance the experience massively because your preferences are logged, things that you like. It gives the sort of the serving team an opportunity to wow you or bring over a drink and say it's a small gesture, but we know that you really like our margaritas. So I'm not typecasting myself, but it's always some kind of drink, Negroni or anything like that. But yeah, I think it's always just a nice touch. And to your point, it's almost the simpler, the better. If sort of no one makes a big thing of it and they just sort of bring it over and go, "Why are you looking at the menu?" And it's just like a little nod to, we see you. You're not just another. It's not volume.
Yeah. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that every question, by the way. I feel like I'm at a stand-up comedy show now and just picking on the audience. Harry, let's talk volume, because you get 1 or 2 people through your gates every day. Well, maybe not every day, but per event that you have. When you're rolling out cutting-edge tech at huge venues, like you've got the O2, you've got Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, you've got new venues coming online all the time. Things like just walkout that make service seamless, but does removing friction also risk removing the connection? Because you must have to use tech in order to facilitate that kind of volume coming through the business.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We need to try not to dehumanise the whole experience. We have to drive volume because otherwise we won't be able to serve everyone. Just to give you a really good example, Twickenham Stadium, we're only live around 6 to 8 big events across the year. So just being able to deliver that volume on a small amount of events is really, really difficult. If you're running a venue which you have 365, everything is running, you've got all your infrastructure behind, everything's ticking over really nicely. It's relatively easy as long as you maintain. So we have to do all these pre-checks before we launch at an event. For me, it all comes down to what's the challenge we're trying to solve there. At half time or at peak period, can we serve everyone? No, you can't serve everyone. It's almost impossible. So this is where we leverage technology to try and serve more people. And it's not about taking away that human experience. It's about getting people through and getting them served. And this is on the retail, the concourse, on the concrete. I live on the concrete. It's about how do we serve people quickly and how do we serve them a quality product. So automation will help back of house for us to get the product there, but we need to make sure that we are removing those pain points. So we're removing long queues, we're removing people tacking stuff into a till. That isn't a great experience. A great experience is moving those people, and it's not about removing labour. It's about retraining those people to become hospitality hosts. So they're the people that you'll see at the gates to frictions. You'll see them inside the store explaining a little bit about what the tech is doing, but also about what the products that we're selling. And it's the only way to serve a huge amount of people is by leveraging the right technology. I think we're now at the stage where we're getting better adoption for the latest tech. So Just Walk Out is a great example of technology that started around 8 years ago, but it's only really started scaling this year. I've been in the frictionless game for around 4 years, and I thought year one we're going to be there. There's going to be hundreds of stores everywhere. It's going to be on every street corner. But even Amazon couldn't get it to work in their stores because it was just too new. And I think we will get to a stage where we accept that level of automation, but it's not right for every level of a venue. So where we look at our venues, we have a triangle of hospitality, with the top tier being sort of the Royal Box at Wimbledon, all the way down to the concourses. And I think concourse level, where we've got huge volume, we have to leverage that tech, so automated beer walls, frictionless, keeping the product quality high, being able to get the volume out is really important, and getting the communication to the fan. We're not looking to put this technology into slash loads of labour. It's about getting the volume and driving through that better experience, because you're not queuing, so you've got more time. You're not actually at our venues. We have 73 venues. You're not actually at our venue for food and drink normally. You might go to Gaucho outside the O2 for an amazing experience before the event. You're at our venues for an amazing event. And we're really lucky we have that captive audience. So you come to the O2, you want to go and see Lincoln Park at the O2, which is a great event, really enjoyed it. You're actually there to see Lincoln Park, you're not there to go and eat delicious hot dogs and burgers that we sell, but we have to cater for your needs. So another example is Billie Eilish at the O2. We converted the whole of our menu to a plant-based menu. We actually had an uplift in sales because we were fulfilling the demand of those customers. And how do we fulfill that? With the right infrastructure behind, with the right automation, with the right KMS screens, with the right technology that supports the bulk journey. So if it's really difficult not to go and scan the QR code and go and tap in on the self-order screen because we don't really care about you. No, it's about, we do care about you and we want to remove those pain points.
Yeah, I suppose when you look at it that way, what you're really talking about actually in this particular circumstance is that the guest experience is actually just getting served. That is your fundamental problem number one that you have to solve. And then how you add value to that is where you can kind of enrich the experience.
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at the Premier League clubs that we do, football clubs, there's a lot of people that don't move from their seats because they're just used to 20 years of not being able to get their pints now. So Aston Villa is one of our showcase venues. And if you ever watch Aston Villa on the TV, and maybe you're not a fan, maybe you are, and maybe I can get you some tickets. But anyway, you'll see that people will be back to their seats before the football starts again, and that's because we leverage the right technology. So we don't just have, just walk out frictions everywhere. We'll have And I think there's some events coming up at Aston Villa which I definitely recommend going to, not just football, more tech events. We have a variety of technology, so we have an area which is the whole tent will be a frictionless bar. We've also got self-order screens, which is mainly wet led, so you order your pint for now and your pint for later. And that's not about saving labour, that's about stopping you queuing for a second time. So at half time you come down with your docket, you cash it in and you get your pint straight away. It's a 3-second customer journey. Whereas before it was about 15-minute customer journey. Going through frictionless, you've gone from a sort of 15-minute customer journey, it's 12 seconds to go to the store. It might be 3 minutes by the time you've got through to the store. And then we've complemented that with standard high volume bars which have multi-dispenser units behind. So that's 6 pints in 10 seconds behind. And then we've even complemented that more with beer walls. So when I walk around stadiums, I just look at dead walls and I think, okay, I can put something there. Oh, there's a cellar behind, that's even better. I can pull the lines through. It's about getting extra points of transaction, not just to drive revenue. The revenue's great and that runs my tech dreams, but it's about serving more people, and that's what's really important. And that's the number one problem we have.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like, really, I mean, if we look at the respective businesses that are on this panel, excuse me, as a prime example, it's really, you've just got to take it in isolation. You've got to solve your own problem and don't worry about what other people are doing. You've just got to kind of look internally within to affect your own guest experience.
Absolutely, and you've just got to ask the questions. So there's probably some questions later on just around feedback and the feedback loop. And I have to hold my hands up, that's a gap that we have within our businesses. We know when something's gone wrong, it's straight on Instagram and Twitter and X and whatever it is nowadays, but it's instantly on there. So how do we make sure that we're listening to the customer? And we have just such a variety of events. If you take the O2 Arena, you go from Lincoln Park one day to monster trucks the next day, and then Excel Arena, we've got conferences throughout the year, and then we've got Formula E. It's absolute madness. So it's all about what does the data say, but also the data doesn't tell you everything. You've got to get out and walk the floors, walk the concrete, and talk to people.
Absolutely, Tom. It's a pretty budget type era that we're in at the moment.
Yes.
It's all right for somebody like Harry who's got a behemoth of a company behind him who can invest in all of this wonderful tech, but casual dining is especially feeling the pinch a little bit. I think that's probably safe to say. How are you still managing to surprise your guests? I suppose any small touch points, anything, either tech-led or not?
I think there's a number of things to that question in terms of actually the real moments of magic and things that make a huge difference to a guest experience are usually either free or relatively low cost. And it's about creating that culture of the business in terms of this is the most important thing, this is why you work in hospitality. And that's been the really hard piece of work over the last 3 years, is taking the Bills team on that journey to go, this is what's important. Two things that you do to change that is one, there's a lot of work behind the scenes in terms of the insights, the data. It's actually taking all the administration off the site. So they're doing what you want them to do, which is interacting with the guests. And you hear quite a lot when you talk about technology, especially in some of the sort of older legacy businesses of, I don't want people coming in and using a QR code or my managers spending their whole life on an iPad. I don't need technology. Technology is the enabler to actually do what you want people to do, which is just to be on the floor, interacting with guests and creating those moments of magic. I think around that culture, we've done a lot of work on making a massive deal. For example, every single week, when we get those special bits of feedback, and our obsession with looking at the data and the insights and the feedback every single day leads then to these great moments at the end of an exec meeting on a Tuesday, where anyone who does something special gets a handwritten card from the exec team because it's the single most important thing to us. That costs us nothing. But I always remember, I couldn't tell you which years I made bonus and which years I didn't make bonus, but I remember every single time my MD, chairman, CEO has actually written to me or sent me an email saying, thanks, well done, that was really, really special. And we've seen that even with Deliveroo. Deliveroo we launched 6 weeks ago. The biggest response we've had from both the teams and all the guests is putting a handwritten card in every single delivery. And the teams who made the competition, who can write the funniest card, who can write the best rhymes, you've ordered wines, here are some extra fries, whatever. I'm not good at that, I couldn't freestyle M&M is safe. But it's crazy, and you sort of look at that costs us nothing other than a postcard, but the guest response and the team response, who now make a competition huge. And we recognise and reward that. And it leads on to the other point, is actually how we sort of mitigate the budget, is that once you create that culture, then, you know, we send the top moments of kindness every year. The top 10 in our awards they go to Italy on a one. That's funded by our suppliers. And that relationship, especially in this environment with suppliers, that has underpinned every single successful experiential thing we've done. So whether that's the Christmas campaign last year, Christmas was our record ever Christmas. We did that with Cluedo. Every guest got a Cluedo card game. It was brilliant from a brand awareness perspective. And that was a conversation with Hasbro that we just said, look, this is going to win-win for both of us. The dog menu that we launched as well. We're not paying for a lot of stuff. The menu's being printed by the suppliers, and there's so much you can do by sort of, once you know what your strategy is and once you know what experience you need to create. You know, a lot of these companies, certainly the bigger companies, they have a lot of cash. Certainly for casual dining brand is saying, look, this is what we want to do. We think it's a great idea. And we've had so many positive responses. Kids eat free. We've changed, we introduced these stories books, we've changed all the crockery, that's super fun. We're not paying for that. That has been talking to the suppliers and saying, look, we've got this great campaign. And then we can focus on what we really want to focus on, which is actually getting the insights. How do we better? What are the trends that we want to follow? How do we increase that experience for the guests? And how do we make these moments of magic? We sit there, we've got a brilliant creative team and our marketing team and our brand director. They sit down and they work out what experiences we want to create based on the people we want to attract, based on a lot of hard work of segmenting our database and knowing exactly which guests are coming into bills and where are we over-indexing, what are we doing well, what then do we need to overdrive. And then I think it's having that creative piece to go, right, what do we want to talk about? And then speaking to suppliers, partners and saying, listen, we want to do this and it's a great idea, it's a win-win for both of us. Give us some money. And that's been the play for the last 3 years, and it's, touch wood, working all right.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, the word there is collaboration, right? I mean, that you can win by bringing in other partners rather than just relying on all of the things coming from within yourself.
Totally, and they also, just then to go back to that, you know, I'm a little bit obsessed with data and insights. Imagine the data they have, you know, for these companies that make dog treats and all for there, in terms of their database is pretty attractive for us when we're launching a dog menu to say brilliant, and then something exciting coming up in November that I don't think I'm allowed to talk about yet. But that's the point, is that then it sort of snowballs, and once you find these partners who have the same ambition and the same brand ambition and they want to create these moments of magic and these experiences, because that's what it's all about nowadays, it then becomes a really exciting place. And then actually the discipline is to calm me down and say, right, let's not do too much, let's just talk about these kind of milestone, big win experiences that we can do rather than too much.
Do you do that kind of experimentally in terms of, like, you, with the best will in the world and all the data that you can have, until you actually get it live out in the marketplace, you don't really know if it's going to be a success. So is it a case of, as you say, you've got to take that puppy excitement, kind of use your dog friendliness around that, to then use that energy to get it out there, but also kind of also have the time to reflect on it?
I think we kind of have two different scenarios where if it's a product, there's quite a rigorous test system. We change our specials and new lines every 6 weeks. So that's the test bed. Anything we go, listen, this looks quite exciting. You know, a year ago, Biscoff was going nuclear, and so we said, let's speak to Biscoff and we should have this. Let's test the product and see if there's a huge demand. Let's do a load of tailored social posts and see what reaction we get. And that testing process, we'll do it 2 sites. If it works, we scale up to 5. If that works, then it goes national. And it's exactly the same with technology. Lovely lady sitting there who does all of our testing, who I genuinely can't thank enough. That's her job, is that finding new tech, running through that test process, and this rigorous, it's 2 sites, try it, see what the guest feedback is, see what the team feedback is, see what the benefits of the business. Brilliant. Is it positive? Does it fit in with our brand? Do the team like it? Is our guest experience better? Then we roll it up to 5. We do another 2-3 months test process at 5 sites, and then we roll it out nationally if it's gone through that rigorous process. So it's 2 different sort of, with technology and products and food and drink, but it is the same process in terms of that test bed before we go national. The other positive benefit for that is something that is good and does work, is that the people who've been in the test site then end up becoming the ambassadors. You know, me saying to a group of people that is a really good idea isn't going to have the same resonance with the team as a general manager, one of their peers saying, hey, listen, we did this, it was amazing, it's a game changer, it made a difference. And once you get that buy-in, actually anything, whether that's products, the sweet spot for us is when other sites, before we've decided to go live, start saying, can we have that? Can we have that product? Can we have those pancakes? Can we have that drink? I went to Leeds and they're testing this. Can we have that tech? And then you kind of know you're onto a winner then. So the hard work's done, that change management piece, which is the biggest challenge, I think, for businesses now, is sort of, we've made mistakes in the past as well, where we've sort of seen technology, and I just think Cafe Bar is a good example to your point where, we went to a QR code model. Some brands do it really, really successfully. We tried it. It's not what the Bill's guest wanted. Luckily, we only did it in 2 sites, so we kind of rolled back and we ended up with a sweet spot where we went actually the hybrid model of offering, the pay at table, but not with the full, yes, you have to use the QR code. That's our sweet spot, and we'll roll that out as well. But it's that testing process and letting your guest, the data, and your teams tell you what works for you, and then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, to you, we kind of already alluded to a bit of storytelling earlier on, but also Tom's kind of brought up the importance of team in here. When storytelling plays such a massive part of the guest experience, how do you get the team on board with that? How did it happen?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with L&D and the training and the onboarding process. So, people that know Gaucho probably heard of the Gaucho Academy. It was very famous back, 10, 15 years ago. When I started 7 years ago in the company, I did the Gaucho Academy. It was 7 days of intense training, no matter what position you were. Receptionist, bartender, table host, KP, doesn't matter, you did that 7 days, all right? It was pretty intense back then, and we used tech to try and streamline that a little bit. So we've now got it into, about 2 years ago, we restructured it into a 5-day program. Not quite as intense, but still 5 days worth of training, which is very important. And we obviously took away a lot of the mundane sort of first aid training, fire marshal training. We put that all online using the tech, and we spent more time interacting with our new employees. The biggest change we did is the first day of that, we call it lab now, so learn, achieve, build. Shout out to our ops people director, should be happy I've said that. But basically that first day, the first interaction that all our new employees had is with myself, one of the ops directors, so either London or the regional, depending on where that lab is based. So they meet us as the first person they meet from the company. We talk about the culture, we talk about the values, and we talk about the benefits as an employee. All right, so that's very important, setting that out and understanding the vision of the company and how we want them to move forward and how we look after them. After that is my favourite thing that we do. It came up with ops team and the people team together, and every company does a mystery diner or some sort of mystery guest. Okay, so what we do is after that first session, which is 2 hours, we sit all the new employees down for lunch. We give them a mystery diner template, and then we serve them. So we show them straight away what good looks like. So they learn straight away what standards are, what's expected of them, and then what that 5 days of training is going to entail. So there's no surprises. With that is, at the end of it as well, which is something I'm not sure a lot of places do, is they have a test. So we want to make sure at the end of that 5 days that they've absorbed all the knowledge that we've given them. They get to taste every single dish that we have on the menu. They get to taste our top 10 wines, our top 10 cocktails. So there's no wanting in terms of the knowledge gap that we're going to leave them to go on site with. They know everything that they should know. So at the end of that 5 days, they set a 100-question test. It's multiple choice. There's a pass mark of 85%. It's not a case if you fail, you don't get the job, but it's a case if you do fail, we can structure the feedback in terms of, right, this person's maybe lacking in wine knowledge. We need to spend some extra time on them before they hit site. So it's making sure that we set everyone up for success and they land on site with the knowledge that they need from a day 1 employee to a day 20 employee. They should be the same knowledge. And that's important for the guest journey and for keeping that repeat custom through our, we're not cheap venue, so we need to make sure that we deliver that 100% customer journey 100% of the time and deliver that 100% hospitality, which we try to talk to our staff about as much as possible. The other thing we did was we introduced a chef's lab, because what we found was that sometimes the chefs didn't get this whole experience, so they would also attend day 1, KPs, etc. as well, and then they would shift to what we call the chef's lab. So what we find with chefs as well is that they were getting thrown into the kitchen to shadow behind someone, making a starter, looking at what's going on, trying to do some mise en place in the background, trying to do some prep in the middle of service, which wasn't proactive and it wasn't giving the the sort of quality chefs and the training that we expect them to deliver. So they're taken out of the kitchen, they go to one of our sites and maybe has a couple of kitchens closed, and they do the full menu tasting, all the mise en place, all the prep in the kitchens, out of the restaurant day-to-day environment.
Good stuff, yeah. I mean, I've been a benefactor of your brand on many an occasion. And the thing that I've always loved about the experience really is, one, that storytelling that we've already spoken about, but actually the ability through that storytelling, in order to get me to change my mind as to what I'm going to eat.
Yeah.
Because I go in there with a lot of the time a pre-fixed idea of what I'm going to eat, and then actually through your team, you're getting people to, maybe spend a bit more cash, but actually find the thing that is important to them. How do you go from that? Is it all to do with that muscle memory of just getting that base knowledge nailed to allow them to then just like be the best version of themselves?
Yeah, I mean, the knowledge is key, right? So if you're confident in what you're selling or what the product is, it's easy to sell it. The guys won't always sell what we tell them to sell. They sell what they like. Because I've gone to restaurants and I've heard and people are like, oh, you don't want that, it's not so good. It's sort of, that's not what you're going to like in terms of steak. So if someone comes and said, oh, I want a rump well done, you're like, it's going to be a little bit tough if you have it at that temperature. Of course, we can do that, but it's just trying to guide them. Maybe you should try to fill it in well done. That'll suit that temperature of cooking. And it's just trying to guide the guest towards, and it's trying to do it in a positive way. The little changes we do, you'll hear me say table hosts. We don't call our waiters, we call them table hosts. We want them to host the table. We want them to treat every guest that's in their venue as their guest, as you would in your own home. All right, that's another sort of small touch that we do. So it's trying to create that experience that you're treating someone that you would in your own home and giving them that experience. You want someone to come into your house. You want to show off a little bit. You want to get out your nice bottle of wine. You want to get that lovely bottle of whiskey that's sitting in the decanter on the top shelf and bring it down and show off a little bit, right? And it's trying to give them that mindset that every guest that comes into our venues is that person.
Yeah, so I mean, really, what we're talking about ultimately with any kind of experience is like get the team on board, get them engaged, and anything's kind of possible.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's listening to feedback as well. So we've introduced another topic on the tech point. It's Work Levo, and I'm not sure if anyone else uses it, but basically it was a Facebook app but for an employee. So encouraging engagement, like you said, with the competitions in terms of some sites doing certain things and testing things so they can post. All the handbooks are on there, all our sort of modules are on there, and it creates, especially with companies that have restaurants all around the UK, a sense of camaraderie. So everyone's talking about each other, everyone's seeing what they're doing, everyone feels included. I know myself 7 years ago when I ran an Edinburgh site, I felt like I was a bit isolated, and it's trying to get that culture and that sort of everyone working together and not just seeing each other once a year to have a Christmas, shindig. And it's trying to create that environment where everyone wants to share ideas, wants to collaborate, and listening to what our guests want as well as our staff.
Yeah, absolutely. James, let's talk data. You get visual on a lot of data and behaviour across a lot of different brands. Are diners really leaning back into the on-site experience over convenience?
I think what we're seeing in the US, and I believe we're seeing it around the world, is really a bifurcation of what consumers are looking for and their definition of experience. So yesterday alone here in London, I started out the day at Blank Street Coffee, came in, placed my order, got my drink within probably 5 minutes, and fantastic expectation. Middle of the day, went to a fairly popular unnamed chicken piri restaurant. Don't remember the name, you probably haven't heard of it. And it took like an hour and 15 minutes to get a piece of grilled chicken, and for me, just absolutely, didn't work for me at all. And then some of us, the Shift4 team and myself and another restaurateur went to Noble Rot. And I think when I was leaving, I was like, I've been here for 3.5 hours. And it was just such a brilliant experience. So I think really what we're seeing is a parsing out of what the experience is that consumers are looking for. So if it's that breakfast experience, maybe you're looking for something very quick, no friction in the ordering process. Give me what I want, what I need as quickly as possible. Get me in, get me out. That evening meal, you want more time, more high touch with the consumers. So I think it's a bit of a misnomer to say the return of experience-led dining. I think what experience dining means is really changing based on who the consumer is as well as what the occasion is. So I don't think it's as simple as saying, probably 12 years ago, if you looked at the Technomic data, 95% of consumers were saying service and quality are all that matter. And today, convenience is way up there. So understanding what the mix of those deciding factors are based on the consumer, based on your product, the occasion, the time of day. So I think it's more sophisticated than it's been in the past.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, I've been a user of Leon for a very, very long time. Back in the day when it used to be a little bit more high touch on service, I thought when they moved to the more quick service, that would be the end of my love affair with them. But it wasn't, because the vast majority of the time I'm having an egg pot for breakfast and I just want it. And the fact that they say my name at the end of it, I'm like, okay, that'll do. And we crack on and we get on with it. So I take your point completely that actually, maybe sometimes as consumers we don't really even know what we want from the experience until it's kind of given to us.
I think, that Steve Jobs certainly said at Apple, you need to tell consumers what they want. I think there's some of that, and there are certainly brands and pizza where they just say, listen, we're going to be hyper honed in on what our customer experience is. We're not going to carry big brand name. There's no Coca-Cola, there's no Pepsi-Cola. We don't do those kinds of things, and either that works for the consumer or it doesn't, but for that consumer, we're 10 out of 10. I think here in this market, a Danish company, Joe and the Juice, having spent a lot of time with their CEO, he says, we would rather have a potential franchise partner or a potential licensee or even a potential consumer leave before we change our culture. We're very laser focused on making sure the culture is as great as it possibly can be for us and really fits within kind of the framework that we built around the brand. So those consumers that are looking for that are going to get it around the world, day in and day out. And if it's somebody who says, you know what, I'm really looking for coffee in 30 seconds, that's not our model. Our model is to engage with the consumer, to make something fresh, to make something from scratch, and it's probably going to be more of about a 5-minute service time. That works for our customers. If it doesn't work, there's Dunkin' Donuts or Greg's or 7-Eleven.
Yeah, absolutely. Harry, experience is a big emotional idea, but in your world of stadiums and arenas, you've got to measure what actually works. Right, we've kind of already touched upon that a little bit, I guess, but how do you know when your guest experience is actually hitting the mark, especially in an environment like yours?
I can definitely tell you when it isn't hitting the mark. It's straight on all the socials, X, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn even, Jesus. That's what got horribly wrong. So yeah, we know instantly when something's gone wrong. I think boots on the ground is super critical. You need to like I said before, walk the concrete, understand what people are saying. If there's big queuing, if there's people, people having arguments, what can we do to solve that? Can we look at the data? I think that's really important. Can we capture the feedback? I think it's a known gap because we don't have a huge amount of events at some of these stadiums. You take our football stadiums, it's 25 events. Aston Villa maybe a few more. They've gone to Europe and a couple of music, which is good. Not
no, but
I can give you that. It is difficult. You have returning fans, you have returning guests. So within football, you can track through the season ticket holders and their forums and the fan forums. Take those fans on the journey, especially if we're looking at launching new tech. Get them in to test it. They'll try and break it. They'll tell you what's not working. But capturing that data is really, really important, and then reacting. So there's no point reacting really after the event. I mean, you've got to react within the event. So can you extract that data now? So within my team, within Levy, we have a data arm. It's called E15 Insights that really pull the data from all our points of transaction. And now we're looking at pulling the data from our labour, so we understand where our labour is. Labour versus revenue, all that great stuff. That's really good for optimization. Also, what does the customer feedback say? We're doing a couple of trials, a couple of secret trials I can tell you about, or leveraging AI on CCTV and tracking sentiment of customers. Obviously, all legitimate Well, we have our own sort of labs, which is our innovation labs, where we take these concepts into the labs and say, what challenges are we trying to solve? Can this technology solve those challenges and fill the gaps in our data landscape? So we're looking at trying to understand what that feedback is. But I mean, as soon as you get the feedback and you know what's working, we can double down on those areas and we can enhance those experiences. As I said, on the concrete, when you're looking at bulk service and you're looking at just people want to get served, they don't want to be queuing, they want to get back to the event that they're there for. It's just reacting to those bits of feedback, getting the staff to those locations to serve more people. I've jumped behind the bar many a time just for fun, really, but just to get more beers out there and get the fans happy, and just communication. So digital signage, you'll see a bit of a shift change in digital signage now that you'll be looking at. You'll be looking at communicating what we're selling, but also communicating what's going on in the event. We might be closing kiosks, and what's the worst possible thing you can have is an Oasis gig and you walk out and half the kiosks closed because we didn't think there was much demand. But if you've got on the digital signage where there's a bar that's still open over there, and within the Premier League clubs, we are actually allowed to open some of the bars after the event if they're sports bars. There's a legal loophole there, so you can send people to those areas. So keeping the fan happy is really, really important. And then how do we actually keep that experience really heightened and enhanced is our people. It's one of our pillars. So people, purpose, planet. People is super, super important. Within Levy and within the Compass Group, we have these SOPs, standard operating procedures. We call it signatures within Levy. Basically every process from PCI compliance on payment devices through to baristas, bartenders, everything has a signature. We're just redoing the technology of the signature because everything's changed every 5 minutes. But we have those procedures that people are trained up in. And when people join the Levy family, it's not the mafia, muddy. When you join the family, you're not, that's me. But when you join, we bring you into an induction, a 2-day induction at one of our venues, and we'll just run through end to end what that customer experience is and what we expect. So yeah, it is a tricky one to react to feedback if you're not open every day. And we take the learnings from, the last time that we played Manchester United or the last time we played Liverpool. We've also got to respect those away fans a little bit. They're still here to have a great experience, and we want to serve them. What was really nice at Birmingham City, which we launched last year, is all the digital signage on our first Rangers friendly. We had Welcome Rangers, and we had slightly different tweaked food offer and drink offer based on who they went past. Which was an absolute nightmare. If it's not on draft, it's relatively slow. But enhancing that digital, I think, is sort of the next step, and I think I probably have to mention the D word, dynamic pricing. Which I think is exactly. I think hotels, airlines, they're getting away with their, Oasis tickets. Or said it. I think it's really tricky. I love the idea of bringing people in earlier with a lower price point. I hate the idea of raising prices at peak. I think it's disrespectful to your customers. But at Birmingham City is a great example. We reduced the pint price by I think £1.50 or even £2. It's very, very low. So we brought fans into the fan zone earlier, which is great because they had better experience. We had DJs, we've got all our curb street food out there, so they've got a full variety of food. But we're reducing that price. We've got people coming in, they rather than coming for a football event for 3 hours, they're there for 6 hours, and then we open our fan zones after the event. So it's really enhancing that experience.
Yeah, I think there was a statistic, I can't remember because I've left that part of my notes at home, but it was it 61% of hospitality businesses are a little clunky when it comes to tech. To me, that's like the old hair in the soup kind of, or over or undercooked broccoli, or whatever gets your goat in the world. Has anybody, again, I'm going to do a little interactive thing here. Has anybody ever experienced that moment whereby you go to pay and they can't quite get it to work and they have to take it away, or anything, or any other kind of tech clunk in your experience as a consumer? I definitely have. I'm not going to pick on you again. Yeah, it was just to get it, because that can make or break, right? I mean, that's almost like the hotel equivalent of the last thing that they remember is breakfast kind of thing. You know, if the last thing they remember is that actually you couldn't get stuff to work, then that's a tough one to do. How do you guard, and this is, I suppose, an open question, because this wasn't on the questions that we actually spoke of, to anybody, how do you guard against like tech clunk kind of breaking into your business?
I'll quickly start and then pass along. So it's all about testing, and it's about bringing the people there to test it. So within the innovation labs that I run, we put all the technology through a rigorous process, which is proof of concept, so to make sure it actually works. Proof of value, if you're looking to reutilize labour, you're looking to change the customer flow or change the customer experience. And then harden ready to scale. And if you harden ready to scale, even at the highest peaks at Wimbledon, the technology should be able to handle it. That's great, the technology can handle it, but can the customer handle the technology? And that's a real tricky one. It's communication, it's explaining to them the steps of the process, but it's also getting people out in front of them to explain. So a great example is at Wimbledon this year we launched a new frictionless little larder, which was tap and go, and it's we've got around 3 times the amount of throughput through that area. Which sadly doesn't mean 3 times the revenue, but anyway. But that is a new experience, and actually worked really well because we had digital signage on the way in showing that you need to get a card out, tap on the gate, you're not queuing up at the end. When you walk out of the store, you can scan for a receipt after. But it's that really rigorous testing before you launch, during the launch, and then supporting the customers on the journey to make sure it doesn't fail.
I firstly just want to say the phrase tech clunk is now firmly embedded in my vocabulary. I love it. I'm going to use it a lot. I think it's sadly it's better in a Scottish accent, so I apologise. But yeah, testing is the obvious one. I think the other thing that we've really learned is know what your plan B is in terms of making sure when things go down as they always do, what is plan B? Because you see it every single day in restaurants. When something isn't working, it's actually that panic that's unnerving. You know, the thing, when you see guest friction, it's because they don't know what's going on or what's going to happen. And if you know, and the team know, if this happens, the Wi-Fi goes down, this bit kit doesn't work. If there is a plan B that all the management knows, so if that happens, do this. And just make it really seamless. And then most guests won't even notice. And I think it is that testing, so hopefully you don't have to get there, but then it's having a really clear brief and spec onto if A happens, do B. Move on, make it look like it's intentional, and you'll probably get away with 90% of the one. That was my Scottish accent, by the way.
We'll have words later on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we implement both the things we spoke about as well. Another thing that we try and do is, actually before we introduce anything, is that we bring staff from sites to the meetings. So I'll pick a general manager or a restaurant manager or someone that's actually working in the venues day to day, understands the operation, understands the steps of service, to the meetings initially with the tech company. You know, whether it's the payment apps, whether it's the new point of sale system, because they're going to ask the questions that really affect them. It's easy for us directors to sit in a meeting and say, "Oh, this sounds great, this looks amazing," but the reality is we're probably not going to use it that much. So, you know, I might have to jump in the past occasionally, but, you know, it's important for people who are dealing with it day to day to ask the important questions, to understand how that test may help them, what time costs could be. And then they're also, when they're involved, they're the champion of that tech, you know, so then they champion that to their colleagues and they speak about it, and they're the go-to person, and you just get them, the more people you get involved on a site level into big decisions, the better.
Great, and I think great answers here. So I don't have a lot to add, other than you would think somebody with the name James Walker would have a Scottish accent. Other than that, and I think, Harry, you mentioned both a Billie Eilish concert where you did a complete vegetable menu and Oasis. I was at Oasis and it seemed that they also had a vegetable menu, but mostly that they were smoking in the stands. So I'm not sure exactly what you're doing there. So when I hear testing, I hear that the technology team is ensuring that things are working the way they're designed to work, and that there's fail-safes in place and there's a backup plan. And I think most companies are pretty good at doing that because I think it's part and parcel to the technologist's skill set to look at that. Where I think there's a big piece missing is in folks with my point of view, is a chief executive officer or the COO, when I'll go in and I'll meet with them, being now a technology provider, and I say, are you happy with your app, or you're happy with your 1PD on your web? And they start quoting somebody else in the company. I say, can you show me the app on your phone? Well, I actually don't have it. I think having senior management really experience the technology that's being provided as a customer, I can tell you where I've done that. You talk about clunk, and I know you're talking about maybe it's not working the way it should. I'm talking about clunk. It is working the way it should. It's just not working the way the consumer really needs it to work. So I think everybody needs to use that technology. I think having everyone in the company focused on that experience, really experiencing things through the guest eyes, and making sure they're comfortable as a consumer and providing that feedback would be the only thing I'd add to, I think, some really great comments.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think we're probably a bit tight on time now, are we?
We've got some time for some questions.
Cool. There's just a couple of quick fire ones. We can do a little quick, probably maybe 1 word or 7 words or whatever answers. But what's one thing that people get wrong about experience-led dining? Just a quick answer.
That wasn't on the thing.
I've just got one. I think one of the big challenges it's seen, not just with Build and other brands, is the experience that you're selling through, marketing is great, digital experiences, Instagram. It has to resonate. It has to match exactly what your product is in the venue, in the restaurants, to go from there. And that's where I think the experience sometimes, you've seen it where it's very easy in the digital age to sell a dream. If you then see that and that captures your heart, makes you passionate, makes you want to go try it, and that's not delivered in the restaurant, you're creating a much bigger problem, because that gap between brand expectation and brand reality is just a pissed off guest. And I think that's one of the really big challenges. There's sometimes marketing saying, "Oh, you're overselling us here. That looks, that 15 stack high pancake, all that stuff." People will expect that when they go in the restaurants. So let's calm down, because that's creating an operational problem. And I think knowing that gap between brand expectation and brand reality is really crucial as an operator.
Thank you. Again, touching on that is the offering being a carte blanche sort of offering. So, we've been guilty in the past of doing an offering in London and then putting that again across all the regionals. Selling Shandon at a certain price is going to work in London, but it might not work in Glasgow. There's difference in licensing laws that work in Scotland, and there is Wales, England, etc. across all 3 countries we use. So it's not just doing a blanket marketing campaign, which I think happens. Well, it was definitely my frustration when I was a general manager. Think this isn't going to work in Edinburgh, but it might work in Richmond.
Yeah, I think to answer your question directly, I don't believe there's a mandate that you have technology. So when I think of the US, one of the most successful restaurant companies that you may not have heard of is a company called In-N-Out Burger. From a technology standpoint, they're still taking orders on pieces of paper. They have fixed menu boards. They don't do any delivery. They really don't do any off-premises. One of the most successful brands, positive same-store sales year on year, frankly, since they started. I think they've closed 1 restaurant, and simply it was a security issue. It was an area that became, let's call it, disenfranchised. And they ended up closing a restaurant just from a security standpoint. So I guess the advice I would have, and direct answer to your question, is if you are going to have technology, make sure that it's up to date and that it works. So, for example, I like wine. I've heard a lot of wine and alcohol talk here. Looking at a higher end restaurant that says, "Listen, we're going to have a dynamic wine list." I love the idea of that, right? Because it's not going to be a paper wine list where you page through, you look for 30 minutes, and you're like, I have this one. Like, yeah, we don't have that one. It's like, all right, great. I guess I'll start over. Making sure that the technology is up to date. So if you have a website and it's listing pricing or hours or specials, make sure that that's up to date. You're not mandated to have that technology, but if you're going to have that technology and provide information, make sure it's up to date and works.
Yeah, I think just one last thing, just around sort of the innovation labs, is that when you're looking at rolling out technology, you're not just beholden to that technology. You've got to stop and review, and if it isn't working, you've got to kill it. So test and learn, and then if it isn't ready to harden, if it hasn't passed that proof of concept, proof of value, then don't be afraid to, lose a few quid and kill it. Because if you roll out something that doesn't work and people aren't happy with it and then aren't using it, you got a load of legacy debt that you've got to get rid of, which is a lot more painful than starting fresh.
Probably painful for the team as well, right? It's not just the guest in that world.
Massively. And I think the other thing is everyone is now so reliant on computers that sometimes you do need to have that mental check. The computer isn't perfect. You look at AI, it's hallucinating all the time. It's great for my masters that I'm doing at the moment, but sometimes I've got to just double check before I submit. But it isn't Wikipedia, it isn't, which isn't always right either. Wikipedia I think is actually better than AI. It is tricky because we're so reliant on technology. You hear horror stories of people getting their phones nicked on the side of the road and then their whole lives are turned upside down. Well, just have a think about that later on. Like, what would happen if you lost your phone? And then just think as an operator, if your system went down and you didn't know where your stock was, you should be able to manage everything without any technology.
Yeah, do you know what? On the way here, my phone crashed, literally, as I was walking from the Elizabeth line to here, and I thought,
That's it. Here.
I was going to tap around to go home, but my ticket was on the phone, so I wouldn't have been able to get back on the train. But final question before I open it up to the floor. Very quick one again. We'll just go down the line. If you could automate one task in your business tomorrow that just frees up a bit more time for your team to be a little bit more interactive with the guest, what would it be?
So this is a solution I definitely need. So if you have it, come to me. We'll talk. I need it for free though. So AI crowd management and flow management around the stadium. So the hardest thing is moving people around stadiums. People sit in G5, they're only ever going to go to G6. They're not going to go any further. So if a wave of wand, I could track everyone, not scary stalker style, but track people and reroute them. Physically move them to other locations where I can serve them quicker. I'm solving the challenge, and wayfinding is an absolute nightmare in every stadium. So how can we make, tracking people and moving them to the right location? Magic wand. Okay, you're right at the bar where there's no queue and you are served. That's a happy customer. So if you have that solution, call me.
I think it's quite a boring answer for me. It's forecasting. Like all of everything threads and flows from accuracy of forecast, all guest experiences, all financial performance. If we got that to 100%, I would be a very happy man. That's it.
Mine is actually almost coming true at the moment, but it's the making a reservation and phoning up a restaurant to try and book a table. We're actually trialing an automated AI person at the moment, which is you phone up and you make a booking through this AI program, which is you put in all the algorithms in the background, but it makes a booking for you, it listens to you, you want to make an amendment, special occasion, and notes it on, and you hang up the phone and you get a text message from your phone. It's just a really seamless process rather than having to press option 1, option 2, tell you exactly what you want. It's AI listening to you, and there's not that sort of transactional element of booking a table.
Yeah, I would say specific to QSR quick casual, if you think of the multiple digital touch points, so you have an app, you probably have a web, you have Deliveroo, soon to be DoorDash, Uber Eats, you might have a kiosk, you may have drive-through menus, you have in-restaurant menus. If you run out of an ingredient, not necessarily a menu item, but an ingredient, if you're a burger restaurant and you run out of God forbid, cheese, the ability to remove all menu items that are reliant on that one SKU is really problematic. Today, and we provide some of this software in the US and are doing so now, but heretofore being a restaurant operator, having to remind a general manager, you need to go to 7 different places and think of every item that uses cheese and remove that versus the ability to say, the technology understands all of the recipes. If it knows you don't have cheese or bacon, it can remove all of those items from every digital experience until that's back in stock.
Very good. Any questions? Anybody got any? Yes, here we are.
You put their hands up. Yeah.
I really do feel like my Oasis scheme now.
Hey.
Obviously, all restaurants must surprise their guests, and all guests like me like to be surprised. But we all know that even like a 2% difference in food costs throughout the year could be tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands for some restaurant groups. How can you ensure that when you're giving value for money or something for free, that isn't eroding your margins, and you can be agile by doing that a lot of the time? If that makes sense.
Anyone have a suggestion?
I think, sorry.
Hi. It's quite relevant for us because, going back to the 3 years, very tricky conversation. I bundled it up all in the same conversation of speaking to the group CFO and saying, we'd like to change the bonus scheme so no financial measures, they're all guest measures. I want to introduce kids eat free and we want to do £5 pancakes on a Friday. It was a tense meeting, but it was underpinned purely by the fact that we've seen huge benefits of that generosity. And the honest answer is modelling. It is a lot of work on modelling. So you've got all the scenarios, and we knew we needed to see a 20% uplift in footfall when we introduced this £5. That's the target we're actually going for. And so I think the insights, the data, the stock packages, they're all really good now. We're very lucky in that we've got a very good commercial finance team as well. With those kind of specific models, they've been game changing for us because they make it much more digestible, and we know exactly for any kind of promotion, discount, we're really good at predicting if we drop this will be the impact on margin, therefore this is the cover uplift we need to do, therefore this is the amount I can spend on SEO or paid marketing because I need to drive this cover uplift or footfall uplift to compensate for the discount. And so it is all down to modelling.
Can I give an opposite answer? So one of the things I used to say, running, let's call it brands that were very focused on guest experience, is my job as a CEO was to make terrible business decisions for the sake of the guest.
Yeah.
And I remember running a company called Baja Fresh where I paid thousands of dollars to overnight skirt steak on a Friday for Saturday morning to have the CFO come in and say, I've done the math, there's no way that we would sell enough steak on those 2 days to cover what it costs to FedEx that in. You should have waited till Tuesday. And I said, you're missing the point. It's not about modeling. It's not about the fact that you've got a spreadsheet that proves this out. It's about making sure every guest leaves here delighted, excited to come back, and willing to recommend. So I think it's really important if you're looking at a long-term decision or an LTO that you're making wise, informed decisions using analytics and insights, but I would also be prepared sometimes as restaurateurs, and you're talking about experience, you have to do what you think is right. I've been very lucky to have been associated with a number of restaurant founders who founded great brands, and I can tell you they're not making decisions based on a spreadsheet, they're making decisions based on creating an experience that consumers want to enjoy and want to come back for.
You need them in your CFO meetings, by the way.
It's I'd sort of not on counter the counter, but it's I do think you can model that now actually, and that's what's really interesting. What we've said is we know through generosity what uplift it has, and so I'm not a boring Sasha Telly sort of spreadsheet guy whose computer says we should or shouldn't, but I do think there are now really good data insights to say we can now track guest behaviour to know our generosity at this level of discount. And that's been actually so interesting on pricing strategies and price points to go, there's definitely the starting point has to be that passion we're giving the generosity. But I think what is interesting now is you can actually build in modelling in terms of predicting guest behaviour based on your levels of generosity. And the £5 pancake is probably the best example we've done of that. To go, we know what that level of generosity will create in terms of seeing the repeat visits and when they'll come back.
There was a question over there, I think.
Answer? Yeah.
Morning, guys, for James, Sean and Tom. Just going back to what you originally said, James, about your experience with Emirates, it reminded me of one of my clients in Dubai who essentially took the L&D manual for Airbus and also took some of the data insights from Apple and their 95 steps of service for a guest experience. Is that something, for them it was a great success, they're a family entertainment centre in Billwaters. It really cemented them doing something completely different. Do you feel that perhaps in the UK we are completely perhaps not as demanding as other markets? And is that something that for yourselves, particularly yourself, Tom, that would implement here in your brands, in perhaps looking at non-hospitality industries to bring some of those experiences in to offer something different?
I can start off, but obviously in Gaucho we take guest notes, and similar to what Emirates do. So every guest that comes into a venue, we recognise them. It tells you the open table works with the LOHAT, the point of sale system, and we can pull up every single bill that that guest has had. So when we talk about guest notes, what we got into the habit of was where our table hosts taking guest notes and saying, oh, they had a Dom Perignon, they had this wine. We already have that knowledge because we have all the bills on the system now. So what we're trying to do is trying to make it more personable. So where does that guest like to sit? You know, do they want to, is that business meal? Do they want to be in and out? Do you want to have their bags ready when they leave the table, ready to go because they're in a rush? And you know, try to customize the guest experience based on their personal preferences rather than what they ate and drank. You know, sorry, ate and drank is the right word. So yeah, using other industries is beneficial, but the biggest thing for me at the moment is that emotional intelligence. And it's understanding what the guest wants. That's the biggest thing. You know, as I said, like I alluded to the business meal, and someone comes in a suit with suitcases, they're probably going to the airport. Can we give them a little bottle of water to take on their journey? And it's adding those little, what we call magic moments. We have a magic playbook that every restaurant has, and in that magic playbook is certain things and gestures that we do for guests. And we add those magic moments onto the guest notes to make sure that, you know, your first meal you come in, you have a steak, we're going to give you a complimentary sauce that you didn't have. We make sure that goes onto the plate, onto the guest notes, so then the next time they come, they'll get that same magic. You know, and it's trying to just create those experiences and not just every time someone comes in they get a free sauce, they get a free side of broccoli. It's trying to make sure that magic moment is tailored to that guest.
We've got time for one more question. I'm not the fun police, generally, if you know me, I'm actually really fun. Last question. Anyone on there? Yeah, hello.
Thank you. Hi guys. Thank you so much for this morning. Some really, really interesting insights. I actually had a question. I don't know, is this on?
It is.
We can hear you.
I had a question about loyalty and kind of in particular loyalty schemes. I think we've spoken a lot this morning about more kind of spontaneous incentives and, you know, that spontaneous kind of gifting element when you come in. But how would you, from all of your experience, sort of cultivate that loyalty and loyalty schemes, I guess, through tech? And bonus points if any of you could sort of help within the luxury space. That is a space that I work in, and I think within the luxury space there's often this argument of, you know, you don't necessarily want to cheapen your brand by putting out these loyalty schemes. But yeah, just really interested to see what you guys have to say about that.
I'll just cover off briefly. Within the Levy stadiums, it is actually very difficult to gain a loyalty following, other than Aston Villa because there are lots of fans. But generally across our stadiums, they're all so diverse. And you look at the O2 Arena as an example, you only go there one or two times a year. So very difficult even to download the app. So for us, we'll come on to VIP in a second, but for the general admission, if you're forcing people politely to download the app so then they've got their ticket, then you're halfway there. But then when you're providing them rewards, it shouldn't be just a case of, okay, you've had 8 drinks and here's another drink. It needs to be personalised. Hi Harry, you're back at the O2. You know, here's your give them information that they actually want. So here's your nearest bar that's got the lowest queues. You know, there's a merch store over there. Here's 10% off. And give them stuff that's tangible that people want. And then if you go up the tiers to sort of the super VIP, so Royal Box or any of our sort of hospitality boxes, there really isn't any apps yet. So we're looking into an app at the moment to cover that off, but it needs to be almost invisible that you don't, or you almost don't want them to download the app, and that's the challenge. That's the challenge that we're going through at the moment. Do we send out an RFID card, and then we track you with the card, so we know when you arrive and you have that dossier legally. on them and how we can help and personalise that experience, I think it's really, really tricky the higher the VIP you go. Because these are people that don't want to be downloading apps, they just want people to know who they are. They probably do. They want the white glove service. So that probably doesn't help any of your answers, but that's really my feedback.
I think, for us, it's a really hot topic at the moment. We've been debating for the last year. Fascinating Tech on Toast panel last month on loyalty apps with Prezzo. We're going down a slightly different route, actually, which I think there's a massive opportunity for us in getting totally forensic on our CRM and our database. And actually, I do think there's resistance to downloading an app. We get email address or phone number from 98% of our guests because they're booking, they're coming in, we're logging them on the system to go from there. And if we can make that whole CRM system better, well, we're talking to you personally because we have your information, we have your data. You don't need to load an app. We can give you loyalty through our database where we know you've come in and we can entice you to come back again. That feels more exciting than having to download the app. And it's sort of, a lot of the loyalty apps, and I'm not dismissing them, they are an access to discount scheme. That's why people download them, because they want to have this. And I think to create those more magical, more specialised, interesting moments, I do think there's an opportunity that actually retail, my wife's a CDO in luxury retail, so we have some very romantic conversations about that. Retail's so far ahead, and they do it so brilliantly, where you feel that someone is writing to you about the product you want, to let you know that they're going to do this for you because you are special to them. That's more engaging to me than going onto my app and going, brilliant, I get 20% if I go another 2 times. And that's not dismissing it. There's so many good case studies on loyalty apps. I just think for us, and it is a cost thing to go back to the budgets, loyalty apps are expensive, you have a team manager, you've got to do them well to do them. And I think that there is definitely an opportunity on sort of database and that CRM management that we're pretty excited as a big project for us over the next 12 months.
That's all. For answers, we've got time for answers. No. Just from me, thanks to our co-hosts Shift4 and Lunchbox for doing today. Our gorgeous panel. Thank you, James, Sean, Tom, Harry, and the most important, our guest host, Phil. Thank you very much. And you guys, thank you so much.